Dodonpachi is the cornerstone of bullet hell. You don't need to like it, but if you're into this genre, you owe it to yourself to at least try it. But that's the tricky part because there's 6 mainline games in the series, and if you're just kind of getting into it, maybe you've only played 1 or 2, it can be kind of difficult to know what makes all of them different because despite outward similarities, they are actually pretty different in play. Like the mechanics are the same, the theming is the same, but the gameplay flavor of each title is pretty distinct. And so in this video, what I thought I would do is kind of go through each of the 6 main entries in the series and try to describe the kind of core gameplay experience of each game and what sets them apart. So this is not going to be like a comprehensive overview of the series with deep dives into historical context and development and each aspect of the games. It's going to be kind of a crash course through each of the mainline entries. And I'm only going to talk about the first loops because I'm a one loop player, and also because this video is meant for kind of people interested in the series, just exploring the series, not for super players who can do hibachis all day long. And so with that said, let's get into it. So let's start off with Donpachi from 1995, Cave's first ever game. It's kind of amazing when you look at this game, how all of the main elements that we associate with the series are already present here in this very first game. Like you have the kind of futuristic military setting, you have the switching between laser and rapid shot, which also means switching between moving slowly and moving quickly. You have the different ships, like the Type A red ship, which is very quick, and then you have the Type C blue ship, which is slow but has a very wide shot. All of these things that were carried to the rest of the series. But the thing that makes Donpachi stand kind of alone in the kind of this series of 6 games is that it's not really bullet hell. Or at least I would say it's not bullet hell. I mean, we could argue endlessly about the exact definition and whether a game is bullet hell or not. And some people say this is the first bullet hell game. Some people say it's Batsugun. Some people might point to Battle Correga with its thick kind of bullet patterns. But for me, there's 2 things that make Donpachi more of an old school shoot 'em up and less of a bullet hell game, although it's going towards bullet hell, it's kind of anticipating it. And the 2 things are, first of all, the enemy bullets are pretty quick in this game. They're very fast. You have this kind of, especially as you get further into the game, you start to get these kind of sniper bullets and maybe, ships coming from behind you and kind of just wiping you out when you don't expect. And then the second thing is your ship's hitbox is kind of on the larger side. And so when you combine these 2 things, what it means is that, again, once you get past the first couple of levels where you can just kind of survive by doing kind of whatever, as you get further into the game, what this means is that if you want to clear Donpachi, you have to get comfortable with memorization, like stages 4 and 5. You kind of need to have an idea beforehand, like where to be, what to do. And every shmup has routing, and the later entries in the Dodonpachi series, they lean very heavily into routing. But I think there's a difference between the kind of gameplay where you need to route the game out, but if you make a mistake, you can still kind of try to dodge these increasingly chaotic patterns, which happens in the later entries. Like when the bullets are on the slow side and your hitbox is small, then you always have a chance to kind of squeeze through these thick clouds. But with Donpachi, it's more kind of like Toaplan style, where you kind of need to know beforehand when you're going to get those lightning quick sniper patterns and you need to know where to be and what to do. And if you kind of mess it up, it's very hard to kind of correct your route. So it's kind of everything or nothing almost. So that's what I would say is the kind of main thing that you need to know about Donpachi. So it's anticipating bullet hell, it looks like bullet hell, and there may be kind of bullet hellish sections in there, but the combination of the quick bullets and your ship's large hitbox means it's closer in spirit to a Toaplan game with memo elements. Moving on to Dodonpachi from 1997. Now this, I personally would say, is the first bullet hell game ever made. Like, you don't need any qualifiers. It's just all the things that make bullet hell are here. And again, if you look at Dodonpachi without having played them, they may look pretty similar. But it's a huge change when you kind of have a reduced hitbox for your ship, and especially with the bullet patterns becoming much slower, but also much denser. Like you start to have these danmaku clouds, or these barrages, or bullet curtains, I believe. Danmaku means bullet curtain or something, or curtain fire. And it's not just about the game becoming like more hectic or something, or there being more bullets on the screen. When you have the slow bullet patterns, what it means is like these fundamental bullet hell skills start to come into play, like bullet streaming, especially in the famous stage 5, where you get these, well, huge huge clouds of bullets. And what you do, you kind of start doing the famous kind of U-shaped motion, like streaming the bullets from side to side, and you have that kind of almost kind of everything is moving into slow motion, and you start to see the matrix and you weave through like an impossible pattern. The scoring system has also evolved, and I forgot to talk about this in regards to Donpachi, but Donpachi already had the chaining system, which is the main scoring mechanic of the series, where you try to destroy enemies in a kind of certain sequence without taking like long breaks between enemies, and you get this hit chain and you get score. And in Donpachi, from what I understand, because I haven't done really much scoring in Donpachi, it wasn't really made for doing like these full stage chains. It's more like you're trying to find these kind of small series of chains. With Dodonpachi, I don't believe you can full chain the game, but again, don't quote me on this, but I know that the chains are getting much longer now, so it's kind of the chaining system has also evolved in this game. And it's not just about being more intricate, it's also about being a little bit more forgiving, because again, with Donpachi, it's a very strict game, both in terms of survival and scoring, where maybe the base level of challenge isn't super high, but it's very punishing. Like if you make a small mistake, it's like that was it. And with Dodonpachi, again, the scoring is strict, but it's less strict than in Donpachi, and it's much easier to kind of find these chains organically. So to sum it up, Dodonpachi is bullet hell. Nothing more, nothing less. It's the kind of bread and butter version of the genre. And again, you don't need to like this game, but I think if you are a Danmaku player, you should at least try it out. Moving on to 2001 and the game known as Dodonpachi II Feng Bon, or B-Storm. Now, this is not made by Cave, it's not even a Japanese game. It's made by a Chinese studio called IGS, and again, nothing to do with Cave, but it is a officially licensed Dodonpachi game, and so I'm going to include it here. Especially as I don't really see people ever playing this game, and whenever people discuss it or talk about it, it's treated as a kind of a joke or kind of a meme game. And to be sure, it's not very good. But it's actually a really good game to understand what makes cave shmup so good. Because if you play Dodonpachi, if you play Daioujou, the game that we're going to discuss next, and then you play B-Storm and really kind of compare the way that Cave does things and the way that IGS did things with B-Storm, you're going to understand like how much attention to detail is in the Cave games and how each aspect of the game is really kind of thought through, and the care that was put into design of the game. Because B-Storm, the way that I would describe it, it's kind of like, it feels like playing a ROM hack of Dodonpachi with some elements of Donpachi and some new elements. So it's very similar to Dodonpachi, but kind of a weird alternate version of the game. And there's like weird things in this game, like this. When you start the game, you have this huge boss bee that drops a million bee pickups. There's like really static patterns where you almost don't need to do anything at all. Then there's kind of points, and I think there's one stage where you can get like a huge amount of bomb pickups all at once, and all of these things, like the stage and boss design, the gameplay design, it's just not super good. It's not very tight. It's kind of all over the place, honestly. But I do think it's worth a look, especially if you enjoy if you can put up with kind of mid to not very good gameplay and enjoy the aesthetics and the kind of vibes and the energy, because I think there's a very kind of restless energy to this game. It honestly at times reminds me of Rising games, not the kind of the obscure weird mechanics of Rising games, but the kind of like you're playing a Rising game and then you're like, what were they thinking? Like this part is like, it's not good, but it's kind of fun maybe, or it's just kind of fun to think about, like what were they thinking, all of these things. And I enjoy some of the music. Some of the bosses I think are pretty cool, even if they do get pretty static. So I'd say with B-Storm, it is more of a curiosity than a game on par with the rest of the series. But if you enjoy the series and you want to just keep exploring and you want to kind of play through this not super good, but kind of a fun and weird ROM hackish version of the series, then I say just go for it. It's not super difficult. Just drop in a couple of credits and enjoy the music, enjoy the graphics, enjoy some of the boss patterns. Next, we have Dodonpachi Daioujou from 2002, and we're returning to the Cave developed games. Now, if you're familiar with this channel, you might know that I kind of sort of like this game. In fact, it's my favorite shoot 'em up of them all. And I've done a kind of I think it's 30 minutes long review of this game where I try to explain why I think this is such a good game. But just to go over it briefly here, honestly, it's like Dodonpachi, but better. Now, again, different flavors. If you prefer Dodonpachi, there are reasons to do so. But with Daioujou, why I like it so much is that they took the basic idea of Dodonpachi, all the things that made it good, and then just kind of tightened up everything. Like, if you look at Dodonpachi, like, some of the first levels, like levels 1, 2, and honestly 3, I don't think they're that interesting to play after you've played them for a while. The game just kind of takes a while to get going, and it was a first bullet hell game ever made. So I don't mean this as a criticism towards Dodonpachi. It just is what it is. With Daioujou, I think beginning with the kind of the first enemies in stage 1, the game is interesting, both in terms of survival and scoring. And the level just kind of, what I really like about the game is that it starts off like kind of, it's not difficult, but it's not super easy either. And then when you progress to the end, of course, it gets more difficult and it does get pretty challenging, but it doesn't get super challenging. It's a very kind of a steady level of challenge, which I really enjoy. All the stages are intricately designed with both interesting survival and scoring in mind. The bosses are more involved, in my opinion. And then the big thing that sets this game apart from Dodonpachi is the hyper system. So the hyper system, what it is that you get these power-ups that make your ship more powerful for a while, but it also makes the enemies more powerful. But it's a very versatile tool. Like you can cancel bullets for a while with it, but you also use it to keep your chain going and raising your kind of number of hits in general. And it makes the game very versatile. Like you can use hypers in different spots, in different ways. You can use them for survival, you can use them for scoring. I feel like the addition of hyper system just makes it a more versatile game, a more open game than Dodonpachi. So Daioujou, kind of like Dodonpachi, but tighter, more challenging, but also more open-ended thanks to the hyper system. Jumping to 2008, we have Dodonpachi Daifukatsu, or Dodonpachi Resurrection, as it's known in the West. So this is an interesting one. It comes from it's a late era cave game, and it's an era that I like to think of as caves candy maximalism era, because the games that came out during that same time, like say Mushi Futari or Akai Katana, very colorful, very flashy, and often they have kind of involved scoring mechanics. And with this game, it's the same, because it's like, it plays like a Dodonpachi game, but again, the kind of patterns are a little bit more intense. The game is longer. There's a very famous laser wheel section in stage 5, which offers a different kind of challenge compared to the earlier entries. So it's kind of boosted up, intensified Dodonpachi game. But then the added mechanics make it very different from something like Daioujou, because again, on the surface, it looks very similar. You have your laser, you have your rapid shots, you have bombs, you have your hypers. But the hypers work differently in this game. What they do is cancel bullets. So you can just kind of pop a hyper and keep on shooting your wide shots, and at least with your first hyper, you're going to cancel a lot of the enemy bullets. Now, the more hypers you use, the less bullets you can cancel, and there's like you get kind of these additional threats that try to wipe you out if you overuse hypers. But still, what this means, it changes, if you're playing for survival, it changes the feel of the game a lot, because with games like Dodonpachi or even Daioujou, where you can get these small bullet cancels when you use hypers, you still need to dodge everything in these games. Like ultimately, you can do small cancels or you can bomb, but with Daifukkatsu or Resurrection, you have way more opportunities to just clear the screen. And when you add to this, if you play the version 1.5, which I think is the kind of the most common version to play, you can play with the strong style ship, which, as the name suggests, has a lot of firepower, but it also has a lot of bombs. And in Resurrection, you have auto bomb. And basically what this means is that you're playing a Dodonpachi game, but instead of having 5 or 6 lives, you have something like 30. Like you can hit a bullet 30 times instead of something like 6 times. Plus you get the kind of bullet canceling hyper. So even though the game is longer and more intense than the earlier games, the fact that you get so many of these kind of like safety mechanics, it gives it a very different feel when you're playing for survival. And honestly, it feels to me, and I think this is also holds true for something like Akai Katana and other cave games from that era, is that the main thing about the game is the scoring, like getting into the scoring and figuring out the kind of the details of scoring. And again, in Resurrection, the scoring gets kind of weird. Just my personal opinion. Like with Dodonpachi, you just chain and never drop your chain. With Daioujou, again, you just chain, but you have those hypers which you can choose to use or not to use, or to use at certain spots to kind of make hitting those links easier, or maybe use them for survival. So again, you can kind of, it's not complicated, but the usage of hypers allows it to be more kind of freeform a little bit. But with Resurrection, like the way that I understand that the scoring works, and I might be wrong about this, is that you start a stage, then you get a hyper, you use the hyper to cancel a lot of bullets to raise your hit count. And then after that, you're not supposed to use any more hypers, because when you're in kind of like hyper standby mode and you have a high hit chain, that kind of multiplies your score or something. So I don't know, to me, I won't say it's a bad mechanic, and maybe I should try some more of it out at some point, but I don't know. To me, it feels a little bit kind of strange. Like the game gives you these mechanics, but then you're kind of supposed to use them in a certain way and then maybe not use them in certain others. I don't know. But yeah, I don't want to get too deep into kind of personal opinions on these games. Just wanted to point out that Dodonpachi Resurrection, the main thing is that the game is flashier, more intense, but for survival play, you get a lot of these mechanics that make it easier to play, because they're just going to save you, like the bullet canceling and the auto bombs. And for scoring, it's a more intricate and involved game where you kind of, in Daioujou, I think it's easier to combine survival and scoring play, whereas in Resurrection, I feel like they are pretty distinct. So playing for survival and playing for scoring, kind of different experiences. And finally, we end up with Dodonpachi Saidaioujou from 2012, Cave's last arcade shoot 'em up. Now, this is a very interesting game because, as I said in regards to Resurrection, to me, the late era Cave games feel like they are pretty involved, like the scoring mechanics, and like if you look at Akai Katana, like the things that you need to do to play the game. I feel like Cave was kind of, they had done so many bullet hell games at that point, and this is just my speculation. I feel like you can't maybe do endless variations of just dodging bullets, so they kept adding these kind of mechanics on top to make it more interesting and to make the game feel fresh. And that's cool. But with Saidaioujou, the intention was to go back to basics and go back to the kind of simple joy of dodging and shooting. But of course, the challenge with that kind of design is, like, after you have been making and perfecting a genre for, like, I believe it's like 17 years at this point, like, how do you go back to basics? Like, what are you going to do with those, just with bullets and dodging? And what they came up with in Saidaioujou is that the game kind of expects you to have played the earlier entries in the series and to have developed certain skills like tap dodging, bullet streaming. You get this kind of instinct of how to react to different kinds of patterns. And the game kind of knows that you're going to have certain expectations about it, and you're going to try to meet its challenges in a certain way. And then it takes those expectations and kind of subverts them with just bullet patterns, enemy placements, and all that stuff. Now, to be honest, like the game, the way that they do is by just by ramping the level of difficulty and just the intensity. Like there's lots of stuff on the screen at any given point. But especially if you look at the boss patterns and some of the later bosses, I think they have kind of these patterns that are almost trick patterns, or they're kind of meta in the way that they kind of play with and subvert your expectations. Like, I know there's a certain pattern, I believe it's in like stage 4 boss maybe, where it kind of keeps on shooting these volleys of bullets, and the natural thing to do is just to keep tap dodging, just to keep tap dodging to evade those bullets. But if you keep doing it, in doing this, the pattern is eventually going to trap you. And so what you need to do is kind of go against the instinct and do a kind of a switch over to the other side. And then there's a spot before the stage 4 mid boss where you have to do a long bullet stream, or a long like popcorn wave stream. Like, you know, like in Ketsui, there's these sections where you kind of have to start again from one side of the screen, and you just keep tap dodging, tap dodging, tap dodging, and there's this swarm of popcorn bullets just kind of flying at you, and you just keep on destroying and creating space for yourself. And again, the game plays with your expectations, because you kind of start off doing it, and then you're like, it's not stopping. So you kind of need to know in advance to kind of start off like at the extreme side and move as slowly as possible, and maybe even dodging up. Like there's a later mid boss in stage 5 where there's a pattern where you need to dodge upwards, which is kind of, you don't really need to do that much in other games. Like, of course, you always have the option to move upwards in other games, but here it's kind of, I feel like the pattern is designed for this. So the game is simpler. Like the scoring, I think the scoring is more relaxed. Like there's no the kind of complex hyper system of resurrection is gone, and I believe that the chaining is kind of more lenient in general. It's really more about the survival challenge, or that's how it feels to me, and these kinds of kind of subversive almost, or tricky patterns. And it's a very challenging game, but it's also a very rewarding game. I think it's a pretty underplayed game. But I would say that it's a game best saved for last, because not only, if you're just getting into the series, the challenge of the arcade version, the basic default arcade mode, is probably going to be too much for you. So it's better to start off with like Dodonpachi, then go to Daioujou, then kind of explore Resurrection, and then move on to Saidaioujou, or maybe even play other games first before Saidaioujou. But also, the kind of fun of the game is also noticing the references, like, it's this boss, or it's this pattern, and then see what they do with it and kind of how they remix it, or again, how they play off against your expectations. Like, you've played all those earlier games and you think you know how to do this bullet hell thing. It's like, it's this pattern, I move like this, it's this pattern, I'm going to do this. And then Saidaioujou goes, yeah, we know you're going to try it, and then we're going to twist it. So a really cool game, but if you really want to get everything out of it, it's best saved for last. And lastly, ranking the games according to my own personal enjoyment. This is not hard, because number 1 is Daioujou. It's just it's the complete package. It's the most balanced bullet hell game that I've played. I enjoy the chaining with hypers in that one. Again, you can look at my 30 minutes review of the game if you want to get to know my deeper thoughts about the game. But Daioujou, number 1. Number 2, this might be surprising, but it's Saidaioujou. It's a beast of a game, and I think it was the most work I had to put into a clear. But like, it's just so, the patterns are just so cool. Patterns are just, I don't know. It's just, and I really vibe with the kind of back to basics design of the game, because just dodging stuff, that's why I play bullet hell. Like when it gets into too much canceling, I don't know. It's just not my thing. I like to dodge a lot, and Saidaioujou really pushes both the strategy and the kind of minute-to-minute dodging skills. So Saidaioujou number 2, and then number 3. I think it has to be Resurrection, because, and number 4 is Dodonpachi, because again, I'm going to compare those two. Dodonpachi will always have a special place in my heart because, again, it was my first arcade 1cc and it got me into this genre. It changed my life. But the more you play it, the flaws aren't apparent at first. That's how I feel. Like just the first 3 stages, like, I don't know, I'm not super into it. Like, I much prefer the kind of the stages 4, 5, and 6, whereas in something like Daioujou, I still really enjoy playing stages 1 and 2. And the chaining, just maybe too unforgiving for me, because, and like without the hypers, it becomes a bit too rigid and strict, so it feels a bit, Donpachi feels a bit too old for my taste when compared to the later entries. Again, it's an amazing game and an amazing achievement for its time and well worth playing. But that's why I prefer Resurrection to Dodonpachi, because Resurrection, even though like the bullet canceling, I'm not super into it, and like auto bombs, I don't know how to feel about them, or I know how to feel about them. I'm not really super into auto bombs, which means maybe I should at some point try playing something other than the strong style ship. But I just kind of, the hyper system, it's still super fun, even if the scoring aspect is kind of strange, and there's just a lot of cool patterns. Again, like the late era cave games, they're just something really special. They just feel so smooth to play also. Like really, just the movement of the ship, it's just, for some reason, it just feels super good. And all the colors and all the kind of boss patterns. So yes, so Daioujou, Saidaioujou, Resurrection, Dodonpachi. And then Donpachi and B-Storm. Well, Donpachi is the better game. It just is. There's like no question there. But if I would have to choose between playing Donpachi and B-Storm right now, I would play B-Storm. I don't think there's more longevity to B-Storm. Like if I would have to choose a game for a desert island, again, Donpachi, not B-Storm. But just to have like a bit of fun, just to clear a game, just to go through a game and enjoy some of the, I just kind of like the restless vibe of B-Storm and like the huge Chinese characters before each boss, the music and some of the bosses. I don't know, not a super good game, but a fun experience. Whereas Donpachi, good game, probably a great game, but not very fun for me. So that's where I stand. So hopefully this video was both fun and maybe a little bit educational. As I said, I didn't go through all of the aspects. There's a lot more to talk about these games. But that's just kind of a crash course through the series and some of my personal musings. Thanks for watching as always, and see you again soon.